All right, welcome everybody for joining us for this week's episode of 4 Minute Fridays. For those of you guys who have been watching in the past, you know that these are sort of the short segments where we sit down with either current or former residents from Christ to talk about their training and all of the unique features at Christ that leads to such a special training experience. Today we're here with two of our PGY threes, Matt Aronson and Tim Henderson, and we're going to be talking a little bit about mental performance and some of their projects that they've been working on during residency. Before we get there, I'm going to have each of you guys actually introduce yourselves. Hendo, we've already met you, but go ahead and quickly introduce yourself again.
I'm Tim Henderson. I'm a third year. I'm originally from upstate New York, then kind of moved around a little bit, did college and med school in Vermont, and then a couples match here.
And for those of you who maybe missed, Hendo previously starred in a wilderness medicine 4-Minute Friday. You should check him out there. And Aronson, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Matt, third-year resident, born in Boston. Before med school, I was out in California for a bit, and then I went to med school at Loyola, right in Chicago, and then fell in love with Chicago and fell in love with Christ.
And where are you going next?
I'm headed to Northwestern, go Cats, for critical care.
So you're staying local, which will be great. You can help us with more projects.
Exactly.
And so today we're going to be talking a little bit about mental performance and mental preparation. But before we do that, we always start with a fun Chicago-themed question. In keeping with the theme today, we're going to talk about our favorite places to clear our minds in Chicago. So where do you go after a long shift or a crazy week or whatever it may be to kind of clear your mind?
All right, this is no joke. I have a sauna in our building, and there's like a whole rooftop thing in Chicago that I didn't realize until I moved to Chicago. It's like rooftop. I mean, I'm spoiled. So I go up there, decompress. I do this thing where I go sauna, jump in the pool, sauna, jump in the pool, and just like reset. It sounds really lame, but it's amazing.
So congratulations. You've already turned into my father. That's great.
Exactly. Very old man.
And Hendo, how about you?
I go down to the Palos Forest Preserves, just like 15, 20 minutes west of Christ. You can just get out in the woods a little bit, kind of be away from everything for a while.
It's incredible. If you feel like you're like in a different state when you're there, it's like it turns to a forest really quick, you know?
Yeah.
I'll do mine too. My favorite place in the city, especially when I was a resident to kind of clear my head, is if you run south, and I would always go running south on the lake path because it's always less crowded. And between Soldier Field and McCormick Place, there's a sled hill that I think the kids probably use in the winter. But if you can kind of, sometimes I'd run the hill, but when you sit on the top of it, you can see the lake and the city, and you're just sort of alone in the park. It was a great place. So
awesome. It's right over there.
Yeah. It's not that far from you guys, actually. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about mental performance. And before we kind of get into the projects that you guys have done, why don't you tell me a little bit about kind of how you became interested in the topic or how you guys both got into this together?
Yeah. So we were both college athletes. I played lacrosse. He was a skier. And so we've always kind of been around, been mindful of sort of the mental aspects of performance. And so it's been something I've been cognizant of for a while, and I was kind of surprised that there was not formal education on this in med school, though there was some rumblings about it. And then when I got into emergency medicine, it was sort of like this perfect application of this sort of needing a mental component to perform both in the acute setting and then to like have an approach for your own well-being. And so there's a new sort of surge of this kind of interest in the FOMED world and some actual decent articles that have come up, and there's a lot of people that are pushing this forward now. So one day I happened to be talking about stuff I was interested in, and in my former career training a lot of professional athletes and how this was such a hot topic. And Hendo, when we were interns, overheard me talking, and we basically never stopped talking about it. And kind of stumbled into like this whole thing where we created a curriculum and sort of an approach.
Mostly Matt never stopped talking.
Exactly. It's about right. And so we had talked about this a little bit, but you weren't exactly inventing the wheel on the subject matter, but what was new was sort of the application. But tell us, Hendo, maybe a little bit about kind of what was already out there in the FOMED space or in the literature.
Yeah, so there was some stuff put out by a guy named Mike Loria, who is actually, I think he's now a third year resident at New Mexico. He'd previously been a parajumper or pararescue man in the Air Force, was a flight paramedic when he was in med school at Dartmouth. So he put out a bunch of stuff about stress inoculation, mental performance, kind of in medicine in particular. But then there's obviously a big emphasis in sports on like sports psychology, mental performance. That sort of dovetails with a lot of programs in the military as well. So there are all these other kind of high performing, highly stressful professions that have this whole emphasis on mental performance, but it doesn't really exist in medicine. And we sort of thought, we're mental performers. We're kind of elite by virtue of being physicians, then especially being in such a high acuity, stressful place as Christ. So why shouldn't we try to bring those other programs into emergency medicine?
And so we talk a lot at Christ about how we try and use our both our electives, but our research projects or resident projects to sort of build a niche or career prep. And so you guys approached us about it and got a couple of the attendings on board, which has been awesome. And we kind of went down this pathway of what ended up being sort of a two-part project. One was a curriculum that you guys shared with your classmates and colleagues. And the other was the AMPed research study. And so Aronson, why don't you tell us first just a little bit about the curriculum itself?
Yeah, so the curriculum, in so many words, is basically trying to name a lot of the concepts that sort of cover, the umbrella concept of mental performance. So, stress, mindfulness, deliberate practice, communication, teamwork, all these sort of somewhat nebulous things that we know exist, give them real names, describe how they are impact patient care and how we perform in the emergency room, and basically give it to residents in a formalized didactic lecture series, but with a real emphasis on actionable skill sets, so not just sort of talking about these sort of mystical concepts and this, sort of these soft skills of emergency medicine, but like give them real actionable tools that they can bring like that day, that shift, to reframe how they think and how they perform and how they work with each other and patients.
And nothing ever goes as planned. And so now we're in a global pandemic, and just last week got a lecture from you guys about kind of a breakdown of COVID and sort of our approach to that as well, which I think was really well received by the residents. So that was the curriculum part, but Hendo, tell us a little bit then about the AMPed research trial or research study that you guys did.
Yeah, so we, as part of this curriculum, it sort of then spread into this research trial. So we did a randomized control trial with 7 other Chicago EM programs at this thing called Syntastic, which is this annual simulated resuscitation and procedure event that all the second years at the programs in Chicago take part at. And we, took roughly half the participants, gave them one sort of stress mitigation technique, had them practice it, and then tested them against their counterparts in the control group at Syntastic during a simulated standardized resus case. And we collected biometric data in the form of heart rate variability, performance data on the actual cases, and then also resident perceptions of their stress and anxiety. And so it's been accepted for presentation at ACEP. We actually have 2 different presentations, and then we're working on publishing everything. So, keep your eyes on the annals. I'm sure it'll be in there soon.
And that's why you won't spoil the plot for us.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to read the editor's summary.
But we talk a lot, especially I've been doing panels and stuff recently this season with other programs from Chicago. And we talk a lot about how Chicago is sort of this awesome like hotbed or it's just a great city to train in emergency medicine. And Syntastic or research efforts like this kind of remind you about, when you're in a city where the programs are collegial rather than kind of competitive, you sort of have these really awesome synergistic results, and your study is a perfect example of that. So kudos to both you guys. I mean, you're a perfect example. We talk about, like the social EM curriculum that, Oyen started and Tammy and some of the other residents have continued. Hopefully this is something that even long after you guys are gone, can continue at Christ and maybe even spread this more nationally once it becomes more prominent in the world of medicine. So really great job there. The last thing we always finish with, and we won't make Hendo repeat it since you did it for your Wilderness Med video, but Aronson, we always like to ask the residents to finish with just kind of their favorite part about training at Christ. And so you're a PGY 3, kind of preparing for your quick care fellowship, but as you look back a little bit, what was your favorite part about training at Christ?
I mean, it's cliche, but it's like a no-brainer. When I rotated here as a med student, it was like just like a team energy and sort of a humble, no frills, first name basis, everyone trying to do the best they can and take care of patients. And so like coming into your own as a resident, there is when you're stumbling around the ER as an intern, just trying not to kill anybody or kill yourself. And then there's this like realization that like, there's this like unspoken vibe and team energy that like it's hard to explain. And it just crystallized more and more as I finished up going through residency.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you guys. I think I'm maybe seeing some of you guys in the room later today, but if not, I'll see you soon. And thanks for your time.